A new flavor for your ear. Epic Spotlight. Putting the spotlight on positive goings on the real people that have chosen a real path. The who's, the whys, and the hows are
So
being
that's
shared.
first, I say the language. The second is the confidence to know that if we start today, tomorrow, or some point, the success will occur. May not be in your lifetime, right? It may be in the next month. But the commitment to knowing if I start the engine, if I start the movement, if I start pushing it down the road and do as much intentional communication and recording as possible, we'll have what we envision, or what the word, right? Because essentially we're picking out and giving a more capitalistic term to what the Bible has said and what we've observed in the world on living as a tribe, right? And creating inheritance, right? Because we believe that the power of 5 to 10 you can buy and overcome any rule that impacts your way of life.
True. Right. And we're back with another one. But before we get going, we got to take care of some housekeeping. This episode today is sponsored by Epic Mortgage. Whether you're buying, investing, or refinancing, call Epic 708-905-5300. It's your dreams, your goals, so let's plan together. Call Epic today. Now on with the show. Today, we are spotlighting David W. Posley Jr. He is a versatile professional with a diverse background spanning business, government, and sports. As managing partner of the Legacy Athlete, he specializes in helping families, athletes, and municipalities prepare for intergenerational wealth transfer. With a global infrastructure, Mr. Posley is a trusted resource for your family and business for generations to come as your legacy advisor. His expertise includes strategic planning, risk management, community building, estate planning, and family governance. Mr. Posley is also renowned for his work in digital asset governance, advocating for underserved communities and markets. As a legacy advisor, Mr. Posley partners with municipalities, businesses, and educational institutions to help educate the community and, more importantly, the next generation of leaders through our Legacy Club, an international capital transition program for families to actively provide guidance and resources to their children. Welcome, Mr. Posley.
Man, thank you for having me, Mr. Rush. Appreciate the invite.
Man, thanks for coming in. And so obviously that was a mouthful. And so, what is it that you do as far as innovation and strategy?
It sometimes is break it down as simple as language, right? And so my innovation and strategy is really just changing and fighting the fight of changing the conversation from generational wealth to intergenerational wealth, right? And so with that perspective of the research, the history, the intentionality, understanding the power of words, the power of walking in effectual truth, right? When you say generational, right, that's one generation, right? That describes maybe you and I are in the same generation, right? And so that means our lifetime. Right. And so right now, just shifting the conversation to intergenerational, to actually effectually connect our words to the meaning in which we are intending to. Now let's see how well families can actually grow wealth, but more importantly, pass it down effectively into the next generation and the future generations.
That's so important. Obviously, when we're trying to build wealth, everyone wants financial freedom. And there's such a concern on that. Hey, do I have enough? Especially when retirement comes. How do you kind of, strategize that? And how do you kind of unpack the whole generational wealth?
So we started from, and I'll introduce part of our some of our processes along the way. Is first the introduction of what legacy means, right? And so when we after we introduce the intergenerational wealth. Once we introduce that concept, one of our main things is to leave our clients with thinking about 100-year goals, right? And so, and removing the stigma from dying to living a legacy, right? So to change where, we have one life to live, but every decision we make live on past us. It can be a curse or a blessing to future generations. So when we can start to think and actually give care to 100 years from now, no matter how old you are, right? 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, right? And to now see how if I build something that I don't care how the next generation handles it, receives it, then essentially you're burdening them. Then work to make sure you transfer it to somebody else while you're living. Right? So that way the actual preparedness or the expectation of life is handled by the person who's living it. Right? Because we inherit things. And our goal is to create conversations, create spaces where that the person receiving the inheritance, right? The person that's impacted by the will, comes into it with the eyes wide open.
Sure.
Right. And so there's a lot of innovation and strategy to creating families to have meetings with intentionality. There's a lot of innovation strategy to have institutions to have meetings and planning that has an intergenerational perspective involved. Right. There's a lot of institution and strategy and technology and things that we weave into our decision making from a legacy athlete perspective that even being here today and introducing this concept is a part of a strategy to intentionally first change the wording, change the language, right? Two things we've said today is a new language, intergenerational wealth, which is just making it public, is in the legalese, and then legacy advisor in this perspective of understanding what we're here to advise you past the decision making that you're naturally going to make, which is just for you.
You know, I love what you said because it is a new concept of, you know, having the sit down. Normally the sit down is between advisor and the one person and saying, hey, what do you wish to leave to your heirs? But actually coming together as like a family and being able to sit around the table and all discuss at the same time. It sometimes is a little uncomfortable just having that conversation, I can imagine. But at least that everyone is on the same wavelength game plan of understanding what their wishes are, you know, upon their, you know, going away.
Hey, Dante, is a pre-approval guaranteed?
The answer to that question is no. It's not guaranteed. It's just a pre-approval. It's based on the information that's been provided. The file still has to go to underwriting and be reviewed by the underwriter. They're the ones that will give us what we love, a clear to close. Have a great day.
So I say the first time to do anything is uncomfortable, right? But with momentum, with practice, with consistency, it becomes a nuisance at how hard it was to start, right? And so that's what again, the purpose and the strategy is to help us get over that initial hump, right? Because we say 5 to 10 people is a family, right? And so 5 to 10, that's maybe more than your household. Mm-hmm. But so start with your father's family up or down, grandparents, etc. So you can find 5 people that will be amenable to sit down together for dinner and have an intentional conversation.
Sure.
And then start to pick 1 or 2 together that grow that table. And now it becomes easier and easier, more profitable. Because imagine how much value is in your family that's completely untapped.
Sure. No, definitely. I mean, sometimes, and family doesn't always have to be DNA. I mean, family could be someone you and I. Correct. You know, someone that you don't, at least the same mindset, right? I mean, we have a goal in mind. We all want to come together for the common good. And so that doesn't necessarily have to be the same flesh and blood.
So here's a unique way that's intertwined into intergenerational wealth planning, right, in our industry. That's a mentor for your kid, right? That's that friend who's close, who knows the family well. Now that's the trusted mentor. Your kid turns 12 or 13 and you want to start introducing him to the family business. Hey, friend who's like a brother or family, you're going to mentor him. You're going to serve. You're going to make sure that they learn or start to observe and understand the way of the Roysters, right? Or the Posleys, while building their own identity in that process, right? Very unique, intentional ways, right? Because when it's bloodline, there's a instance of bloodlines, right? Sure. And understanding and knowing who's a part of your bloodline. There's also an instance of knowing who's married into, right? And who helps to create that bloodline going forward, right? Or mixes with it. and what that's intertwined into the decision makers and the strategy of the family, as well as the friends, right? People who are, whether they're advisors, business partners, friends, except exes, right? All those things have the space and a place that can positively or negatively impact the legacy of the
Hey, Dante, will my mortgage stay the same?
Well, it depends on what type of mortgage you get. If you get a 30-year fix or a 20-year fix or any type of fixed rate product, the principal and interest will remain the same throughout the duration of the loan that you're getting. But what could fluctuate is your real estate taxes and your homeowner's insurance. That's always going to fluctuate on a year-to-year basis based on the county that you live in, as well as just the insurance provider that you have. So can your payment go up? The answer is yes. But your principal and interest portion of it, if you have a fixed rate product, will remain the same. If you have any more questions, give me a call. Have a great day.
Now, what are some common challenges that you face just being an advisor, talking to these families, trying to get everyone on the same wavelength? What are some of the challenges that you face?
First is the barrier of the language. And knowing that these terms, albeit may not be readily available to you, they're accessible and they're very applicable to living a life in an intentional manner, right? So that's the first, I say, the language. The second is the confidence to know that if we start today, tomorrow or some point, the success will occur. May not be in your lifetime, right? It may be in the next month. But the commitment to knowing if I start the engine, if I start the movement, if I start pushing it down the road and do as much intentional communication and recording as possible, we'll have what we envision or what the word, right? Because essentially we're picking out and giving a more capitalistic term to what the Bible has said and what we've observed in the world on living as a tribe, right? And creating inheritance, right? Because we believe that the power of 5 and 10 you can buy and overcome any rule that impacts your way of life.
True.
Right? You can create a homestead or an estate or a scenario, a place or land that could feed your family, irregardless, right? So that's where the sovereignty and why the word that the institution industry call one of the things I'm referring to is a family constitution. Mm-hmm. We call it a legacy plan, that we just break it up into a legacy introduction, a profile, right? Investment policy statement, personal policy statement, and an education policy statement. So we really simplify the process to chew on it and know the education policy. That means we need to build training around these. The investment, we need to know we need advisors and brokers to support what we're doing here, right? The personal, that's what we need to take a look in the mirror and do that as married couples or families and know this is where we need to build ourselves and record ourselves at, right? So it lives and breathes because from the family constitution, it's not legally binding, but the goal is to make it habitually binding.
No, definitely. I mean, obviously from a retirement standpoint, we talk about the buckets, retirement buckets. So, we talk about our personal savings, pensions, fixed income that can come in. But inheritance is a part of that retirement bucket that we don't really spend a lot of time on. We just kind of, wait until someone passes away and say, hey, what did I get? Versus, having these conversations and it doesn't have to stop with just the trustee or just the one person. That family concept. I'm really liking that. So, take me to, obviously I was, you got a lot going on. I mean, you are advising people, you're a husband, you're a father of 4, and you got a lot going on. So, how are you able to manage and juggle, just your whole life?
It's funny because I would look at it and say I struggle, right? If you ask my wife every so often, right? I do struggle. And it's because not only having where my wife is now a stay-at-home wife, 2 kids are in school, 2 kids are homeschooled. It's a lot of flexibility, that I try to create. So it's one thing that if my wife we may not be able to plan for certain things, but if something happens in an emergency, I'm available, right? On the day to day, I'm available to the needs of my wife and family due to the way my schedule and my life has been set up, right? But more importantly, from my perspective, I'm now operating from my legacy profile, right? So in the legacy profile, I'll take a time to introduce like how we view capital, because what you said from a retirement perspective, we call that financial capital, right? So we identify that there's 10 forms of capital, right? And in this, thank you, Holy Spirit, this is how I'm able to manage, right? So when you look at the 10 forms of capital, they're broken up into 2 forms, internal based and equity based. Internal based is made up of 6 forms, right? You have spiritual capital, self capital, social capital, which is your audience, target audience, human capital, it's your team, like us, your partners, the production, etc. You have instructional capital, how you plan to teach, what's your best teaching methods, right? How do you invest into that? So this podcast is your instructional capital, right? And then you have intellectual capital, expertise that you offer in those spaces, right? So those 6 things are all make up your internal based capital, right? So then you also have the 4 equity based, right? So that's financial capital, which people know all the things you said from a financial sense. But you also have commercial capital. That's your business model. That's your brands. That's your franchise, right? What you own that helps make money on while you sleep or consistently. You have natural capital. That's the land you own, right? That's the things that you can drink water from your land, create your own food. And then lastly, there's public capital. So that's public incentives, grants, tips, benchmarks, right? All these things are part of your everyday legacy, right? And so the quicker as a plug, you have a profile to see everything that you have in those spaces, to organize them, prioritize them, and then put a plan together for each one, right? And know where you're really going to know where you view each one of those.
Sure.
What you're putting time. And so our goal is to make you stay at one per that, because it's enough to focus on all of them.
Sure.
But if you aren't focusing on all of you're leaving capital on the table. You're misusing, you're misappropriating it, right? Because it's all that you're made up of. So about 1.5 years ago, I did my own and have been really operating from it. And in certain instances, each capital has grown into almost be its own institution or its own operation.
Sure.
Because of the level of intentionality that I live by. Like I don't move outside of those capitals, right? And I can be better at my human capital, but the number one human capital I have is my wife. It is my kids.
Sure.
It is my brother and my parents, right? Then it's my brother-in-law, then my in-laws, right? And so then from there, but it's all of the people that I've had across my time before I came across this.
Correct.
So all those relationships. So now you're intentional about it. After you then catalog this out, who's everybody? So then in our policy statements, we're going to cover those gaps so you can identify where those resources come from. All right. So that way now, because our legacy is really too much for most people to handle in their day-to-day life.
Sure.
You're literally spending a lot of it not paying attention to. So once you're made aware and see how you're doing it subconsciously, now our attention, our action or our engagement is making sure that you know what you need to be focused on, how big that goal is, whether it's a 1-month one or a 10-year one. If it's 10 years, I mean, you don't stay off this focus in this space. Right. You submit it there, right? Because your 10-year goal says it, right? So if it comes to human capital, you're operating in a space you're not supposed to be, right? For me, my target audience right now is a legacy club, right? And so if I'm not speaking that, if I'm not intentional about that, if I'm not showing up to these spaces where that second generation is at, then I'm not moving according to what my profile says and what I'm saying and where God has led you to operate it.
Yeah. Speak on the Legacy Club. What is that?
So the Legacy Club is grown now from it started as our way of like our sports division of building a community of elite athletes and preparing them for the transition of both taking on the wealth of their family and the wealth of that their prowess would create, right? But as some of these kids has grown and moved from the sport, right, and now are at Penn, Howard, other places, Edward Waters, and doing things in business, is really become a haven for what I call the kids who have the pressure and the privilege, right? Who are second generation plus, who need help guiding their own lane, but being made aware of the responsibility that it comes with privilege, right? Or being second generation. And so at Legacy Athlete, we determine first generation as married business owners or college athletes, former college athletes. So if your parents are married, or one of them started a business, or one or two of them have started or played at the college level plus, you're a second generation, right? And so that it comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of DNA responsibility, a lot of things that we fail, right? The numbers is atrocious, right? In first generation, wealth is lost at 58%. By second generation, it's 70. By third generation, it's 90. Right. So we first change the term and say we want to create intergenerational wealth and help you to start walking in integrity. Right. Sure. That'll help the 58%. Now, with this legacy club, we're looking to talk the 90 and 70 and 90, because generally you either have one or two things. This is very general. One, a kid who completely rebels and wants to find his absolute own way. Right. Or a kid who tries to do exactly the same thing. And because you're different, you fail because you're trying to mimic something that you can't do. Right. Right. So those two things is generally what happens and why you lose the 70%. And by the time you were actually spoken to about what it takes, you've
gone too far. And and this is a topic that's so, important to me. Obviously, you're a former college athlete yourself, like myself as well. And, one of the things is we both have friends that went on to professional and they almost get displaced. They're over in a different country. They have success, and then they come back, and then they don't know where to start. And, it's almost like, oh, well, you got to start all the way back at the entry level. But they have all this history, all this experience, and they were so dialed into just a focus to be the best they can be, whether it was football, if it was basketball, and they just never were brought into a bigger topic of just the overall scape of like, hey, let's fast forward to when you're 60, 70, 80, these 100-year looks, these 20-year looks.
A banker, a mortgage broker, an attorney, a realtor, and an accountant are just a few professionals that you'll need their services sometime in your life. We all need a financial team. We all need professional partners that provide information so we can make informed decisions about our life and the things that matter the most to us. I'm willing to be a part of your financial team. I'm here for you. I'm just a call, Zoom meet, a direct message, or a text message away from working with you. So what questions do you have for me?
I was privileged, right? Literally 20 years ago, because shout out to HF, our state championship is when 20 years ago, we took second in the state. And the summer prior, I had the opportunity at the cost, right? Because opportunity cost, had the opportunity to spend time on as a congressional page, as U.S. congressional page. I spent 3 weeks in D.C., but that was at the cost of playing summer ball, trying to fight for a rotation spot, playing AAU, going to elite camps, right? But that experience, even was still on the path to me getting here, but it was a very unique eye opener to let me know the power of what's around me, right? And how things are created around me. And so taking time and taking opportunities, and working with and being, helping to make sure that HF was able to go to Cook County Board, get a resolution where every one of their names were read in, so they can start to find that exposure, right? To get those opportunities, things that's big for me. And so that thing and exposing them as early as possible to let them know you're a business once you become a professional. And the more you build your skills of doing the work that's outside of the extra work that's for your sport, the better you're prepared to leverage a transition at a level that is appropriate of your hard and soft skill.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously being an athlete, being a student athlete and that, you're referencing Homewood Flossmoor, the Vikings.
Yes, sir.
There we go. Shout out to the Vikings. Congratulations. State title. I saw that on TV. So, as we move forward into the future, what would you say is, looking ahead, what are some things that we can kind of, focus on? What are some things that we can maybe start
thinking about. Gotcha. So this goes back to why I spent a lot of time building not only my resume, but more importantly, my research chops in the digital asset space, and chose the governance area is because we live in a digital economy, right? And so many of our community isn't prepared, right? I know, and I still operate ill-gotten of the digital economy, right? And so now our habits and is attached to our financial capacity, right? And more of our financial transactions are going to be moved towards technological platforms, right? And I mean major transactions, right? Like you're going to buy your car with a cryptocurrency, never having to meet a person.
Hey, Dante, should I go with a broker or a bank?
Ooh, very good question. Obviously, I'm a little biased on this. I would say you always want to go with a mortgage broker. We shop around for the best deal for you. We have different banks and lenders that we work with. But at the end of the day, you want to go with someone that you trust and you feel comfortable with. Have a great day.
And so without needing somebody else to finance it, right? Like these things you can technically do them right now, right? And so when it's just for me saying technically do it right now to 60% of people, everybody knowing what I'm talking about,
Right.
That's the only thing that's happening, right?
Right.
Because we already live in a society where social credit is a real thing, right? Your social relationships, your social habits, your social media specifically is a direct correlation on your opportunity, whether it's a job, and soon it'll be flights, trips, right?
Sure.
All these things, right? And then what's the institutions that'll be created that helps to capture this data correlation? I pray the Legacy Athlete is one of those that grows into it. We've been looking at the new business protection or identity protection companies that they're creating that is allowing institutions to leverage financial or lending according to those habits. And so those are the things that it's even more vital. So you're more critical to go have conversations with people who are innately going to act like you, right? I don't have to think about how many things that me and my brother is going to do alike, right? And now I don't have to think about how often or what I do that me and my wife and my kids are going to like. Like I know to a very good statistical significance what we don't like that all is going to enjoy together, right? And so the more that you can do that, be in those spaces, the more that you can predict or at least mitigate the risk of the loss of opportunity due to ill-gotten factors that you've associated with that you don't have much information about, right? I don't need a lot of information about my brother because I know how he's going to operate. I know it. I can predict it, right? So I got to build better relationship with my brother to make sure I'm better prepared for tomorrow.
You know what to expect because it's purposeful conversations, it's purposeful relationships, and you're more focused on what's important to you. Great information today, David. I appreciate you coming here and sharing this knowledge and have an epic day. Man, I appreciate that. Thank you. Look forward to being.
The who's, the whys, and the hows are being shared and given to you. Epic Spotlight, baby. A new flavor.